I think the listening is the fun bit, but yes, this is where rubber meets the road. So once you have all this knowledge and all of this insight, you have to do something with it. The real value of this information comes when you feed it back into your design. So you have to act on this information. That's the critical piece.
The last step is to get all the information from those interviews that you've done and put them into something we can actually act upon. Now the rest of this lesson assumes that you've actually gone and done those interviews. First up, we're going to look at what the most common feedback was and what was most important to people.
Not only will that feedback inform the design of your program, but it will also start to build the trust and the relationships and the buy-in from the community that you need to make this successful. So you've solicited a ton of feedback. In that case, I would recommend, coding it, analyzing it, really kind of categorizing it and figuring out, okay, which pieces of this feedback are the most relevant and where do they plug into the different components of our model. Not every piece of feedback is actionable. We do receive feedback that we can't act on, we can't do anything about, So we have to assess feedback and analyze within the context of what we're capable of doing, what we can really act on. And also, some feedback is opinion. All feedback is opinion, I guess. But oftentimes, we like to try to assess whether a piece of feedback is the opinion of one person or whether that's representative of a larger group of people. And so we'll have conversations or we'll dig into some of that a little bit more to really understand, is this something that we should act on? A community health worker might be the only one in the community who knows that when a baby is born, the first thing that the baby is given to drink is a cup of water, because the belief is that babies are born thirsty. So you come in with a curriculum to say, every baby needs to be breastfed within the first hour after delivery. And you never know that before that baby's being breastfed, they're being given a cup of water, unless you take the time to ask, or to listen, or to observe, and to really understand what are the processes that are happening beforehand. So it can change the messaging and the education. So if you just have a message that says, it's important for babies to breastfeed within the first hour after delivery, that's one message. If you have a message that says, it's important that babies have no other nutrition or liquids except for breast milk within the first hour, then that addresses what you know is an underlying practice of giving babies water. So you want to be humble and in avoiding the thinking that you've already designed a perfect solution, and think about how you can test that solution to learn from the community perspective, where are the gaps. This process of acting on the feedback you receive is not a one-time process. It's an iterative process. And you have to build these feedback loops into your design to ensure that you're consistently getting feedback and acting upon that feedback.
Next is the last part of the template, which is basically a space for you to design your ongoing interaction with a community over time.
But things change. People's opinions change, new problems arise, and so you have to create a mechanism to continually solicit that feedback and to work it back into your program design. If you're implementing a program that's serving a community, a population of people, then bringing all those people together is a great way to solicit feedback. If you're providing a service that's more individualized, then maybe it makes more sense to have individual feedback sessions. But often really creating that space for community feedback helps to create the sense of buy-in, really helps to integrate the program with the community, create a sense of ownership, and also reinforce transparency, because everybody knows that they're hearing the same message. So I wouldn't recommend tweaking your model every day. That's probably not going to work very well. Solicit feedback at key points, key inflection points, and then incorporate that feedback into a model and make those changes and those tweaks at points when it's appropriate. That will help to both strengthen your model and make it more effective, but also continue to build this idea of community buy-in, community integration. And you can decide what the frequency of that is, if it's on a monthly basis or a quarterly or biannual or even annually. And maybe it's just like a quick survey that somebody fills out, or a pop-up when they're using the app. But whatever it is, you have to be consistently getting that feedback. Otherwise, you just don't know what's happening. You don't know how your program is being received. So in a best case scenario, they would already know how it's changed. They would have seen those changes and seen how the changes have responded to the concerns that they raised. Sometimes those changes come in the form of announcements. So for example, our program, when it started, we were treating women, pregnant women who had sexually transmitted infections. And the community raised concerns about the husbands not being treated and women being at risk of reinfection without husbands being treated. That was a great piece of feedback. We took that back, we analyzed the budget, and we incorporated treatment for partners for sexually transmitted infections. And so then at the next town hall meeting, we could announce that that change had been made and people had a really clear channel of communication to understand what was happening. But this is a way to create buy-in from other stakeholders. So for example, when we host community meetings, we'll always invite the government district health team to come out and participate and help lead community meetings. And that creates an opportunity for our government partners to really also hear this feedback, to better understand the work and the program, and to help to deepen and build that relationship. So these community feedback forums are an important mechanism, but also it's important to be sure to be continually soliciting feedback from all stakeholders. So our government partners and their feedback is equally important to the feedback that we're getting from our patients and our community members. So how do we make sure we're getting feedback from all of those stakeholders and integrating it into the program? So before we launched our maternal and child health program, we held over 150 community meetings. Those were through the process of talking about the program design and soliciting feedback. That covered the process of recruiting community health workers. And the way it looks now is we do these feedback forums, these community town hall meetings every 6 months. So what our team actually does is they take the data that we're gathering. So we gather all this data because we need to see how the program's working and if we have impact. And oftentimes that data only flows in one direction. It comes into the program management team, and then it goes up the chain, maybe to funders, donors, government. What we like to do is then take that data and bring it back to the community. So in some cases, this means drawing a graph on a big flip chart paper or making a run chart and holding it up in the community meeting and talking about, this is what happened. Over the last 6 months, we saw the number of kids treated increase from this to this to this. Or maybe it's a negative trend. We've seen family planning uptake drop. Why do you guys think this is happening? What's going on? And we have these amazingly rich discussions with community members where they say, this is happening or that's happening. Or maybe they say, we don't quite understand, what is a percentage? And then we do a lesson on what's a percentage. The point is that it's an open dialogue and we gain so much insight from discussing that data and getting the feedback of the community. And then we take that back and we tweak our program design.
And we're done. If you haven't actually done interviews yet, you know kind of what you're up against. If you have done interviews, then you've got somewhere to write all that stuff down. You've got a plan for getting ongoing feedback from the community to your org in some kind of schedule. You've also got a way for us to give feedback to the community. And finally, some way to prove that we will be held accountable to the stuff that we promised we'd do. So if you haven't gotten out there and done some interviews, now's the time to start. If you have been doing interviews, now's probably the time to keep doing them.
It can be really easy to default to the idea that we got input at the beginning. We checked that box. But you have to stop periodically and go back to the community and check back in and say, is this still working? Communities are living their daily lives, and your program team might not be in that community every day, but you need the services that are being provided to continue on a daily basis. And the only way for that to happen is if there's a real sense of ownership. And when you can achieve that community integration, then it just hums. And that is really what we're striving for. That is true systems change, and that's a beautiful thing.